You know, when we step onto a plane, there's this deep, almost unspoken trust, isn't there? That feeling that, statistically, this is the safest way to get from A to B. Settle in, hear the engines hum, you just fundamentally believe you're safe. But what happens when that faith isn't just shaken but completely shattered? When the sky itself seems to fall? June 12th, 2025. That nightmare became reality. Picture this, a Thursday afternoon. Pretty normal, really, at Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel International Airport in Ahmedabad, in India. Busy place. Air India Flight 171, a big, modern Boeing 7878 Dreamliner, is all set for London Gatwick. On board, 242 people, each with their own reasons for flying holidays, family, maybe starting a new life. And then, just like that, disaster. Barely a minute after takeoff, this symbol of modern flight just plummeted, not into some empty field, but right into the middle of a medical college campus, packed. The immediate scene was just horror, a massive fireball. And we know now at least 270 lives lost. On the plane, and tragically on the ground, too.
It's just a gut punch, isn't it? And this wasn't just some random, isolated event. It forces us, really, to look hard at how much faith we put in technology in these incredibly complex systems, especially with something like the Dreamliner state-of-the-art. But when that machine ends up as, well, a charred wreck,
Yeah.
you have to ask tough questions. So we're here today to try and unpack not just the facts, which are grim enough, but the human cost, the sheer scale of it, and the questions that just demand answers.
Okay, let's try and piece together those last moments. It all happens so fast. The Dreamliner gets clearance, starts its takeoff roll down the runway. Powerful engines. It's carrying 169 Indian nationals, 53 Brits, 7 Portuguese, 1 Canadian, everyone expecting a routine flight to London.
But then, maybe 30 seconds after the wheels left the ground, something went horribly wrong. Witnesses said the plane just struggled, it wasn't climbing properly, nose barely up, and trailing black smoke, it was almost gliding, like eerily towards the ground, not climbing away at all.
And the impact, devastating. It hit the BJ Medical College campus right into a dining hall. Students were having lunch. The numbers are just staggering. 241 out of 242 on the plane, gone. And on the ground, at least 29 people killed, including 5 medical students, young people training to save lives, lost in an instant.
What followed was pure chaos, an inferno. You've got 125,000 liters of jet fuel. Imagine the scene. Firefighters battling these huge plumes of smoke, rescue workers trying to pull debris from buildings that were just shattered. Reports described a wing lying in the street, the tail sticking out of a wall, just nightmarish.
It's almost impossible not to, try and imagine being there. Being one of those students just having lunch, thinking about your future in medicine, or being on that plane like the Joshi family. They took a selfie at the airport, all smiles, excited about moving to Britain, and then just gone. Futures extinguished. So brutal.
But amidst all that darkness, there was one name that emerged. Vishwashkumar Ramesh. He was 38, a British citizen, sitting in seat 11A, and somehow, miraculously, he survived. He said, 30 seconds after takeoff, there was a loud noise. There were dead bodies around me. I got up and ran. Pictures showed him, bloodied face, torn clothes. His family in Leicester just couldn't believe it. It's almost unbelievable, really. One person.
One miracle against such overwhelming loss. It really brings it home. You look at who was on board. 169 Indians, 53 Britons, 7 Portuguese, 1 Canadian. Each one a story cut short. And we know some of those stories now. Hardik Avaya and Vibhuti Patel from Leicester. They just got engaged in India heading home. People remembered Hardik as a model devotee. Vibhuti was a physiotherapist, just starting their lives together. Then there was the Nanabawa family from Gloucester. Akil, Hannah, and their little 4-year-old daughter, Sarah, remembered for their kindness, their joyful spirit. And the Joshis, Dr. Pratik Joshi, a radiologist, his wife Komi, their 3 kids, twins Knuckle and Pradut, just 5, and Mariah, 8. That airport selfie, it's heartbreaking. Colleagues remember Dr. Joshi looking forward to simple things like fish and chips in the UK. Even Fiongle and Jamie Greenlaw-Meek from London. They ran a wellness center, posted a happy goodbye India video just before boarding. Just awful.
And the horror on the ground, too. The dean of the medical college, Meenakshi Parikh, she described it. Students eating lunch, then the plane ripping through the hall. She called it apocalyptic. Scattered plates, books buried in rubble, the smell of jet fuel everywhere. Lives dedicated to healing, just wiped out.
And then there's that other side of fate, isn't there? The story of Bhumi Chauhan.
Yeah.
She missed the flight by 10 minutes. Stuck in Ahmedabad traffic. She was furious at the time, apparently being turned away. Now, well, you can imagine sometimes life's annoyances are its biggest blessings, I suppose. A really stark reminder.
Yeah. And on the ground, the Gujarat government has stepped in, of course. trying to manage the immediate aftermath. They've announced relief funds for the families, significant sums, or 1 crore for the deceased students, or as 20 lakh for injured people. And the grim task, the really necessary but awful task of DNA matching is happening at Civil Hospital, trying to give families some closure.
So, okay, the immediate shock, the human cost, it's immense. But then the question looms, how? How does a modern Dreamliner just fall like that? The investigation is key. We know it's a joint India-U.S. probe. Britain's involved too. And crucially, they found both black boxes, the flight data recorder, the cockpit voice recorder. What are they actually listening for, looking for in those last seconds?
Well, those recorders capture an incredible amount of data, thousands of parameters per second on the FDR, plus every sound in the cockpit on the CVR. Investigators will be laser focused on a few key areas. First, engine performance. Was there a loss of thrust? Uneven thrust. Second, the automation. The Dreamliner is highly automated. Did the systems behave as expected? Was there a malfunction, maybe a sensor issue giving bad data? And third, inevitably, the human element. What were the pilots doing? Saying? Were there any actions or perhaps inactions that contributed? And the fact that there was apparently no distress call, that's really perplexing. It suggests something catastrophic happened incredibly quickly. Or maybe the crew was just completely overwhelmed trying to fly the plane.
Right. And we should talk about the plane itself. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner, launched back in 2004, hailed as this big leap forward. Fuel-efficient, high-tech, long-range. It's supposed to be the pinnacle, yeah. But has its record actually been spotless?
No, not exactly spotless. Despite the hype, the Dreamliner program has had its share of, let's call them gremlins. There have been documented issues over the years, things like fuselage, joint defects, basically, problems with how major sections of the plane are put together. That's pretty fundamental stuff. And it makes warnings, like those from the Boeing engineer Sam Salahpour, seem much more serious in retrospect. He raised concerns about the fuselage potentially breaking apart after thousands of flights. Boeing downplayed it at the time, said it wasn't an immediate safety issue.
That sounds quite different after an accident like this.
It certainly does. And there were other things too, electrical system problems early on, production delays that actually halted deliveries for a while. So yeah, not a perfectly smooth history.
And what about Air India? The airline operating the flight, they were privatized fairly recently under the Tata Group, right? Tried to turn things around after some past incidents. We remember the Kozhikode crash in 2020, Mangalore in 2010. Does this raise questions about their operations now?
Absolutely. Investigators will be scrutinizing Air India's maintenance records for this specific aircraft, VTANP, I believe.
Yeah.
Was all the required maintenance done? Were there any corners cut? What about crew training? Were the pilots fully prepared for this kind of low-altitude emergency? And yes, this unfortunately puts the spotlight back on Boeing, too, given their recent history. The 737 MAX crashes are still fresh in people's minds. That whole crisis really damaged trust, led to that deal with the Justice Department. And then you have the tragic story of John Barnett, the whistleblower who specifically warned about Dreamliner production standards and then died earlier this year. It's a lot.
Yeah, it really is. You see Boeing's stock took a hit immediately after the crash.
Nearly 5%, yeah. So both Boeing and Air India are frankly in the hot seat. Their initial statements have been, fairly standard, expressing sympathy, promising cooperation, but the pressure is immense.
It feels like the truth here isn't going to be simple. Probably a complex, messy mix of factors rather than one single cause.
That's usually how it is in these complex systems.
Yeah.
But stepping back, there's maybe a bigger theme here, too. You could call it perhaps a kind of collective arrogance. This belief that we've totally conquered the skies with technology that's almost magical. The Dreamliner with its sleek design, its advanced automation. It was meant to make crashes like this almost impossible, obsolete even.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, trusting your fancy smartphone to navigate you through a hurricane and then being shocked when it fails. Maybe we have put a bit too much blind faith in the machines, assuming they're infallible just because they're new and sophisticated.
It's a fair point. Though I'd argue the systems are designed with multiple backups, precisely because engineers know things can fail. The real question is often why those redundancies didn't work, or if something happened that bypassed them entirely. It comes back to that interplay. The manufacturer's quality control, the airline safety culture, the pilot's actions, the maintenance crew's diligence, the regulator's oversight. If one link in that chain breaks, the whole thing can unravel very quickly.
So for us, the people who fly, what does this mean? The impact stretches so far, doesn't it? Ahmedabad, Leicester, Gloucester, London. It's a truly global tragedy, hitting communities everywhere. It just highlights how connected we all are and how vulnerable, well, We've tried to dig into the layers of this awful event, from the sheer horror of those first moments to the ongoing search for answers, and crucially, the human stories behind the statistics.
And what we're left with, I think, is a pretty stark reminder. No matter how sophisticated our technology gets, we're still dealing with fundamental physics, with the potential for human error, and maybe just the unpredictable nature of things. Limits still exist.
Yeah, and this demands more than just sympathy, doesn't it? It demands real accountability, transparency, and maybe a dose of humility, too.
Exactly. The black boxes, they'll give us the technical answers eventually. We'll likely find out the sequence of failures, the why, in engineering terms. But the bigger question, the one that really lingers is, will the right lessons be learned this time? Will Boeing tighten up quality? Will Air India and other airlines double down on safety culture? Or will we, the passengers, just sort of forget and keep boarding with that same blind trust?
As Ahmedabad grieves and the world tries to make sense of it, that story of Vishwashkumar Ramesh, the one man who walked away,
Yeah.
it's incredibly powerful, a symbol of resilience, perhaps. But let that glimmer of hope also be a reminder. Honoring all those who were lost means doing everything possible to make sure this never, ever happens again. Because if we don't learn, if we don't change, then we really are just flying blind, waiting for the next tragedy to remind us just how fragile those wings can be.